So about a year ago, I released a tutorial that shows you exactly how to build your own custom theme using Elementor Pro. Now, I released that when Elementor Pro Theme Builder came out. A lot of things have changed since then, so in this updated video, I just want to show you first of all how you can build a theme from scratch again, but this time taking into consideration some of those new features that have been added, like the theme styles, the ability to edit the header and footer inline, and some other things that I think may be useful, especially when you're building your own theme for the first time using Elementor Pro. So, if you're interested in this updated tutorial, join me as I take you through the whole process of doing that right now. So the first thing we're going to do is download and install the Hello theme. Now the reason we use the Hello theme is because even though we're kind of building our own theme, WordPress itself just needs to have a theme installed. We don't necessarily have to use it, and we're going to use the Hello theme because it's basically just a bare bones theme by the developers of Elementor itself. This makes sure that we've got WordPress happy and we don't need to worry about any extra bits and pieces getting in the way and causing problems when we set things up as part of our theme. Now on top of the Hello theme, we also need to make sure that we've got Elementor Pro installed. Now you have to use Elementor Pro. The free version doesn't come with the ability to create theme files. We can save some basic templates like page and section templates, but not build a theme. So just bear in mind, if you don't have the Pro version, you can't really follow along with what I'm going to cover in this particular video. So providing you've got the Hello theme installed, you've got Elementor and Elementor Pro installed, we're ready to start moving on. So let's just jump over into the dashboard of WordPress now and start taking a look at all the things we have to start building our own custom themes with Elementor Pro. Now, since I did my initial video on how to use the theme builder in Elementor 2.0, things have kind of moved on. The core fundamentals are pretty much the same, but we now have some real time-saving features that makes the whole process even more simple and even more comprehensive. But we need to set a few things up first of all. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to come over into Elementor and we're going to come into the settings section. From there, we're going to take two options and we're going to disable those, the disable default colors and default fonts. So we're going to check both of those and hit save changes. Now, why are we doing this? Because Elementor recently released the ability to create theme styles, and that means that we can set fonts, we can set font sizes, colors, button colors, whole range of different things. All of this now means that when we create our own themes, we can also tie in all of that information as well, all those design assets. We have to disable the default colors and default fonts, otherwise this won't work. The next thing we're going to do is jump over to the appearance and the customizer so we can take a look at what options are available as part of the Hello theme, just so you can see some of the things you can do in there, but primarily just to see that there's pretty much nothing to it. Let's go to appearance and into customize. Once we come over into there, you can see we've got 4 tabs on the left-hand side: the site identity, menus, homepage settings, and additional CSS if we wanted to apply some global CSS to the site. Now, by using something like the Hello theme, we can benefit from some of the options that are available. If we come into the site identity, for example, we've got 4 different options we can set up: the logo, the title, the tagline, and an icon, which is basically like your favicon that'll show up in the browser tabs. All I want to do is set the logo. So we're going to set this to use the dark logo, and we'll say select, we'll skip cropping. And what this basically allows us to do is when we set up our header and we put our logo in there, we can use the logo widget as opposed to just using an ordinary graphic. And then if we wanted to change that globally throughout the site that uses that particular widget, we'd simply have to come into the customizer. If we come back out of this now, we can set our menus inside here if we wanted to, or we can just do that in the normal way as part of the dashboard of WordPress. I'll leave it for like that for now. So we're going to come back out, we're going to leave everything else as it is, and we'll hit publish just so we've got our logo at the top. Just a nice little head start on what we're going to do. So now that we've gone through and set everything up, let's take a look at the actual theme builder itself. If we come out of the template section on the left hand side, we've got theme builder. We're going to click on that, and that's going to take us into the basic theme builder section. Now you may be looking at this and thinking, well, there's not really much going on. How do we work with it? Well, let me just explain this section, and then you'll see when we start to build things up how this will populate with the different types of theme building files that we set up. So first of all, we've got the theme builder, which will show all of the different theme files that we create. Currently, there are none, but as we start to create them, they'll be listed here. We then have 4 different tabs, one for each of the different types of theme files that we can create. The header and the footer, they're pretty self-explanatory what they do. The single is basically, if you look at a blog post, that's a single template. In other words, it shows the post, whereas the archive will show a list of posts. So again, you'll see this as we go through. Now, if you had something like WooCommerce installed, you'd see some extra tabs inside here, one for WooCommerce for single and one for WooCommerce archives. Works in the same kind of way, it just shows product as opposed to posts. That's the only difference between them. So let's kick this off by taking a look at the header setup. So we're going to click to go into header. Once we do that now, because we have no theme file set up in this particular section, we're presented with this first sort of create your first header. So what we're going to do is we're going to say add a new header. Because we've chosen the header tab, it already knows that it's a header we're going to create. But if you click to expand that, you can see we can choose from any of those other options, plus some template files, which are things like sections and so on. So let's just leave that as header. That's perfectly fine. Next thing I'm going to do is give this template file a name. Now, what I tend to do is I have a naming convention that I tend to use for pretty much all of my projects. So if I'm going to create a template file or a theme file that's going to be used globally, I'll always call it default something. So in this example, it's going to be default header. Now, if I wanted to create a header for a specific section that would be different to the default header, I would name it something different, but again, including header. So what I would suggest is just getting into the habit of creating a naming convention that you stick to, because it'll just make your life easier when you come back to a project maybe 6 or 12 months down the line, and you're thinking, what did I name that particular template file? Use a logical naming convention. It just makes your life considerably easier. Okay, so we've done the two things we need to at this point. We're going to click on Create Template. That will then go through, open up Elementor, and if we've got any templates we can pull in from as part of Elementor or Elementor Pro, we could use those as the starting point, or if we wanted to, we could start completely and utterly from scratch. Now let me just take you through this section before we move on and start taking a look at actually building or changing things. If we take a look, we've got 3 tabs at the top. We've got Blocks, Pages, and My Templates. Blocks, as its name would suggest, are different block elements of a page. So things like headers, footers, hero, services, those kinds of things. Those are all broken down into various different sections which you can filter from on the left-hand side using this particular section. Now, because we're creating a header, it will automatically show us the header template files that are installed as part of Elementor Pro. If we wanted to, we could change that to something else. So for example, hero, and that'll show us all of the hero blocks. Obviously, we want to stick to the header section because that's what we're currently working with. Pages, we don't need to worry about because that's going to show us full page templates. It's not what we want to use when we're creating a header. And My Templates, as we create templates, they will all be listed there so we can use those as and when we see fit. Let's come back over to the block section. So what we're going to do now is we're going to find one of these pre-designed templates and use those as a starting point for our particular design. So I'm going to take this particular header. Now you'll see that our logo is already inserted because we'd set that up as part of the Hello theme. You'll see underneath we've got the placeholder widget ready to put in our menu, but because we haven't configured a menu, nothing is showing up in there. So what we have now is a normal kind of page that we're going to work with as part of Elementor. So we can click on any of these, we can make changes to anything we want, we can configure anything any way we want. So if we didn't want this green at the top, we could simply click on there, come into our style section, and we can choose whatever color we want from there. So let's choose this light blue. We've now changed that. So we've got our first template set up. Next thing we're going to do is going to click on Publish. So once we click on Publish, you can see it takes us over and says we need to add a condition. And this is the sort of core fundamentals of using the templates as part of Elementor Pro to build up a theme. You just create conditions to say when and where a particular theme file will be used. So what we can do is we can click on Add a Condition, and then we've got 2 different settings. We've got include and exclude, so you can use whichever logic you want. So we're going to say include, and you can see it currently says entire site. We'll click to expand that out. And from the drop-down list, we have 3 options. Now, this is a context-sensitive menu. All that term means is the menu will change based upon the theme file that we're editing. For now, though, we're going to say entire site is perfectly fine. If we wanted to, we can add additional conditions. So you could say add another condition, and you could choose exclude. So we could say let's exclude this from the archives. And then we can say all archives, and you can see we have extra options inside there. So we could say now we've set up 2 different conditions that this header would be shown on the entire site, excluding any of the archive pages. So let's just remove this second condition. We've now just set it up to say include the entire site. Let's hit save and close, and that's our first theme file created. So we've now got a global header that'll apply to every single page on our site. Now, if we take a look at our test page, this is the home page before the header has been applied to it. So this is the Hello Theme basic bare bones layout. So let's just refresh this page, and there's our new header. So you can see there's our blue bar at the top. We've got our logo. Obviously, we're still missing that menu system, so we'll put that in a moment. So that's how easy it is. Now, every single page, we can take a look at one of these posts. We'll jump over, and you can see, again, the actual single post template still looks absolutely terrible. But what we do have is we've got our header applied to our page. So everywhere now, this header is going to be evident. Now, before we move on, there's one other thing I want to show you, and this is one of the biggest things that have been added into Elementor Pro in the last couple of months, and one of the reasons why I'm showing you this process of creating your theme from scratch again. So let's come over onto the left-hand side where all our widgets are, and we're going to come to the little hamburger menu in the top left-hand corner. We're going to click to open up the different options, the preferences, the settings, and all those kinds of things. What we're looking at is the third option called theme styles. So let's click and open up the theme styles. You can see it now pops over and opens up a different set of options. We've got a range of different sections inside here. The background, which is the global background color for our entire site, typography, buttons, and so on. Now, I'm not going to go in this in tons of detail because I've already covered how to use this in a lot more detail, its own dedicated video, and also how I would actually personally use it. So I'll link those two videos down in the description below. So if you want to find out more about theme styles and how the best way to use them is, check that out. Now, I'm not going to set the background for this. I'm going to leave the background as it is. However, we're going to come into the typography, and in there, we can now configure all the typography options for our entire site. So let's do that. Let's set some of those up to start off with. So what we're going to do is going to click the text color, and in there, we're going to set this to be a dark gray. Once we've done that, we're going to come into the typography options, and from there, we're going to just choose the font family we want to use. So for this, we're going to use Poppins. We're going to set a value of about 14, and you can see if we take a look on the right hand side, you can see this is changing things, and we can see some basic examples of what we're doing. We can change the weight if we want to in here to whatever we want. So we'll set that to something like 400, so it's a little bit thicker, and we'll say we're happy with that. Paragraph spacing, well, it's up to us. We can set the values in pixels, ems, or VH. So let's just say we'll set this to be something like 16 pixels. So we have a nice space between the paragraphs. So with that in place, if we want to, we can change our link color. So we can say what we're going to do is, so on hover, we're just going to set this to be underlined. So we'll come into the typography, set the decoration to underline. And then on the normal, we're going to set the color to be different. So we'll set that to that light blue color. So we've now globally styled the link colors for the hover and the normal state, and we can do the same for our headings. So what will happen is we can use this sort of hierarchy. So if we set the font to be a particular style, in this case Poppins, you can see that the header is also styled to Poppins. So we can leave that as it is, and it'll sort of cascade down through. However, if we wanted to, we could change anything to do with the different headings as well. So we can change the color and the typography. So let's just say for the typography, we didn't want to use Poppins. We wanted to use something like Montserrat. We could choose that from there. You can see the font now updates. And if we want to, we can change the font weight on there. And if we wanted to, we could also say that they're going to be uppercase. So you can see we can easily come in and adjust things, adjust the sizing, all those kinds of options. And there we go. We can just basically do that through all the different headings, 1 through to 6, to make sure that all the colors, the size, the styles, fonts, all those kinds of things have been set up. Buttons is exactly the same. We can come in and control the button typography, text shadow, the normal and the hover state, the background colors, any border radius, and so on. Form fields, images, and we also have custom CSS at the end of it. Now, the custom CSS would apply to the global styling of your site, not specifically to a page. So just bear that in mind. Once we've done that, we can click on Update. That will now make any changes throughout your entire site. Now I've gone ahead, added in the menu structure just so I can show you how easy it is before we move on and take a look at the footer to make changes and customize this the way that we want. So what we can do if we want to is we can easily come into any of these and make any adjustments we want. So we can click on the image. We'll come into that. You can see we've got margins at the top and bottom. Let's just set those to be a little smaller. So we'll do 10 at the top, 10 at the bottom, just so we tighten that up a little bit. And if we come over to our menu widget, So you can see there's our nav menu widget. We've got a green color inside there, which obviously doesn't make sense because it's not using the color scheme that we've set up. So what we're going to do is we're going to come into the style section, and inside there we can adjust the typography, we can adjust the drop down, the toggle button, all of those kinds of things. So if we just go to the hover section, you can see there's the pointer color that's being used, this sort of green color. We're going to change that for our blue, and we'll find where we mouse over. Now we've got blue. With the drop down, if we wanted to, we could adjust things inside there. So we'll hit update. Once we've done that, we'll jump back onto our test page, refresh that. You can see that's now tightened things up. The right colors are being used and so on. Next of all, let's take a look now at creating a footer. For the theme builder, we're going to jump to the footer section and we say add new footer. You can see footers pre-selected, and again we're going to do the same thing. So default footer, click on create template. Once we do that, that'll take us over and we can now take a look at the blocks. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to find something that I think is kind of in keeping to what we've been doing. We'll insert that into our template. So that now puts our design into the page. Obviously there are a couple of things we need to sort out. The colors are all wrong at this point in time, so we need to correct that. It's very easy. All you need to do is click on any of the items. So you come up to the style tab, and you can just change this color to whatever you want. You could literally take it out of there, or you can set the color. So let's just clear that. And then that will pick up any default colors that you've set up as part of your theme style. If you want to override that, you can simply come in and choose the color that you want. So let's just set it to this pale blue, for example, and do the same with our button underneath. We come into our button, come to our style section. I'm going to come down to our button, change that, set that to our blue color, and we're now getting things back to the way they should be. Same goes for the little line at the top. We simply come to our style section, come to our border, reset that to be our pale blue, and finally we've got the navigation. We're just going to set that to our blue as well. Okay, so that's our footer section all set up. Hit publish and we get the same thing again. We can now add our condition. So we're going to click on add condition and we're going to leave that set to entire site. Hit save and close. That's now our footer section. So let's come back out to our website, refresh our test page, scroll down the page. Once we get to the bottom, there's our new footer section all set up in place. And now every single page, if we go to one of the posts, you can see our footer section is all inside there. So let's just jump over to the archive tab. Again, we're presented with that same option that says create your first whatever we're choosing. So we'll say create our new archive. We're going to call this default post archive. We'll create our template. Once we create our template, we're going to be brought into the blocks area. So what we're going to do is we're going to close this down. It's going to take us into our template area now. And as you can see, our header is in place and our footer is in place. Let's create our archive. So when we open up an archive template, you can see, or an archive theme template, you can see on the left hand side we've got three icons to start off with in our widgets: the archive title, the post, and the author box. Because we've chosen an archive for this particular theme file, it knows that those are probably the kind of things that we're going to want to do. Let's pull in the archive title. We'll just drag and drop that widget in. You can see that just pulls in some pre-hold template information. So what we're going to do is we're going to add a bit of space to this. So we're simply going to come over to this particular block. Now you can see we've got a bit of an issue here because it's so close to the actual navigation. When we try to get to the little block, it makes it very difficult. We can deal with that quite easily. We can simply come over and use the navigator option. Click to open the navigator up. You can see now on the right hand side we've got a new entry, at which point this will show us all the key sections. Now it's worth bearing in mind at this point in time the header and the footer are not considered to be a section inside the archive template that we're creating. So that's why you're not seeing those there. It's only showing us the actual section we've just dropped in. But what we can do is we can click on that. That'll activate the section, and now we can come over on the left hand side and we can use the options inside here. So let's just say we're going to uncheck these values. At the top we're going to add in 50 pixels of spacing. Now we've given ourselves a bit of breathing space at the top. So let's come back up to our widgets on the left hand side and let's just drag in the archive posts and drop that underneath the title. You can see that now pulls in the basic layout for an archive page. Let's just close this navigator down now on the right hand side again. So you can see this is giving us the title at the top and 3 posts from our archive. If we do it this way, we now have a lot of control over exactly how we can style things, how we can lay things out. Now you still have the same level of control if you were using one of the predefined blocks. However, you have a starting point and you might have to make changes to everything. This just starts off with only the elements you want to drag in. With that being said, we can simply choose this. We can choose a different skin if we want to, and a skin is just basically the design that's going to be used. Currently it's using the classic. Let's change that over to cards. That already looks a lot cleaner and a bit more modern. We've also got a third option, which is full content. And it's not the nicest looking, but it's kind of what you'd expect as part of the default way that most themes work in WordPress. We're going to take this back and we're going to go to the cards because I think that's the nicest looking option we have. Now, all these different pieces of components inside this particular layout can be controlled. So we could say the number of columns, we could say we only want to put 2 columns in. You can see that immediately updates. Do we want to show the image? We can say yes or no. So we could get rid of the image completely if we wanted to. We'll put that back to yes. Image size, you can see it looks a little bit pixelated at the moment. It doesn't look the best. So we can choose a different image size. So we can go to the medium and you can see that now looks a lot better, a lot clearer. The image ratio is basically how we can deal with the height and the size of this image. So if we just drag this down a little bit, you can see we can position that to get a much nicer looking layout. So if we just adjust this a little bit, I think about 56 is going to work perfectly for the ratio that I've got set up for all of my thumbnails. We've also got uncategorized, which is just basically the metadata saying what taxonomy this is associated with. So we can get rid of any of these kinds of things, including things like titles and excerpts and so on. So you can see we can take the title out if we wanted to. We can put that back in. We can remove the excerpt. We can change how much of an excerpt there actually is. We might say we want 30 words in there to give us a little bit more. So you can see we can fine tune and configure this exactly as we want to. We also come at the bottom, we can say we want to put some pagination in there. So we're going to say numbers, we're going to say that numbers and previous and next. So when we get more actual entries into our blog in the archive pages, we'll have nice pagination at the bottom. So now that we're happy with the way that our new archive page is set up, we're going to click on publish, and again we're brought back to those conditions. If we click on add condition this time, you can see we've got all archives is set up as the include condition. Now if we click to expand that, we now start to see some more of those options that I talked about from this context menu. So because we're dealing with an archive, there are quite a few different types of archives throughout a typical WordPress site. But you can see we've got all archives which will apply this template no matter what. So it'll do it site-wide for every single archive that's going to be used. For a lot of cases, that might be perfectly fine. However, if you want more granular control, you can choose different archives for different page layouts. So author archives could be different from the date archive, from the search results page. Then underneath the post archive, you can see we've got the post archive, categories, direct children or direct child categories of. So if we chose something like that, you can see that now opens up another option, at which point we can then come in and we can filter even lower. But we're going to set this to be nice and simple and say all archives. We'll hit save and close, and we've now created the archive layout for our WordPress site. So let's just jump back over now into our test page, come back to our home. And as you can see now, that's picked up the archive layout that we've just chosen. So everything is now set up the way that we want. If we click then to go into one of these, you can see we still have the single template that we need to update to make sure that looks as good as it possibly can. We're going to come into Theme Builder, come to the single option, add new single. What we're going to do now is you can see it says single, select the post type, we're going to click on there. Now this is where things can get a little confusing when you're working with WordPress. You may consider the fact that we've chosen a single and that's going to be for a single post. Why is that related to both posts and pages and the 404 page? Surely a post and a page is different. Well, the way that WordPress works is it considers pretty much everything to be a post. And when you group those posts together, it considers that to be an archive. In other words, a group of posts. So once you kind of get that concept into your head, you stop thinking of them being different. They just have slightly different options. So we can set up a single template for both posts and pages and the 404 page. So they can all be different. For this example, we're going to start with the post. So I'm going to click on post. And we're just going to call this default single post. We hit create template. That'll take us in now, and we can choose any of the predefined blocks if we want to use one of those as a starting point. So let's just choose a design that I think is quite tidy and in keeping what we're doing. So let's just insert this particular one. That'll download all the relevant files now and drop the design into our page for us. So you can see there's all the layout all set up inside our design. Now we can, again, like I say, make complete and utter changes to this. So you can see that the image at the top doesn't look quite right. Or we could come to that image there and you can see we can adjust the height of this. So we can say we want to set that to be 600, for example. We'll apply that, and you can see that'll adjust things accordingly. So we can go through now, configure this, make any changes from this basic template that we've set up, that we've chosen, and you can easily come in and make any changes. So we'll hit publish on there. You can see again, we've now got conditions set up. And again, we've got a range of different options. If we open up the post section, you can see there are even more options inside here to get to a really granular level of control. Now you could, if you wanted to, set this as a global value for all singular. Obviously that may not always make sense. It may be dependent upon the kind of site that you're setting up. So I'm going to leave this set to be posts. You can see that it says next to that is all. However, if we wanted to, we could click on there, we could filter that down to specific posts, or depending upon if we choose something different inside here, we may say in child categories, for example, and then we can click and we can choose different child categories and filter those out. So we'll say posts, we'll say save and close, and that's our single template created. Come back into our page, we'll refresh this now, and there's our new design all set up, pulled in from that template. So our basic theme is now set up. Come back to our home page, you can see we've got our archive. We've got our header, we've got our footer. If we come into any of these items, we've also got the option now to see exactly what we've got laid out as part of that blog post. So that's the basics of those 4 key theme files that we need to set up. Now previously, when we were working with designs and templates and so on, whenever you created an archive or a single, any of those kinds of templates, your header and your footer area, if you wanted to make changes to those, you'd have to literally come out of the page that you're editing and go into either the header or the footer and start editing there. You no longer need to do that. You can come over any of these and you'll see it now shows us in yellow as opposed to the normal blue for the header. And if we scroll to the footer at the bottom, it does the same thing there. We can now, if you want to, simply click on that where it says edit the header or the footer. Click. That will now take us directly into the footer in this example. We can make changes to it. As you can see, we're still in line. We still have the whole sort of the template that we're working with in place. So we can come in, we'll make whatever changes we want. So let's just say we want that logo. We want to set that to be the left. We can now click on update. That's now updated the footer template. And when we're ready to go back to our normal page template, we can simply come back over that. And you can see that now is in yellow. We can click edit single. And you'll find now we're back into editing the single template. Could be the archive template, could be any of the other templates. But you can see it's quick and easy. And the same goes, like I say, for the header. We can click on edit header. We now jump over into the header section and we can now make changes inside here. So we can click on this. We can say, well, this menu at the bottom is kind of annoying me a little bit. So we're going to come onto that. We're going to put some padding at the bottom, for example. Let's just say we're going to put 20 pixels of padding in there. So we made some changes to that, hit update. And then our heading has now been updated. We can just click back on edit single and we carry on editing the single post template. So it makes it much quicker and easier, a lot less round trip editing going on. We can now kind of do inline editing so much quicker and easier, and one of those just little updates that I wanted to bring your attention to because it just makes your life considerably easier. So there's one final thing I want to show you before I wrap this up, and that's global widgets. Now we covered this right back at the beginning and just mentioned we were going to take a look at it. So let me just show you what a global widget is and why I think they're useful, especially when you're working with the whole theme building aspect. Let's just say that you had a testimonial section and you wanted to use this on the same area across all of your archive pages, but you had multiple different templates for those archives. Like we just saw, you can set up multiple different templates for various different parts of your site, even using the same kind of archive or the single and so on. The easiest way to do that would be to set up a global widget. And then if you make a change to one of those, you can have that reflect upon all of your templates. So let me just show you how we do that. We're going to add a new page. Doesn't really matter how you do this. I'm just going to use a page as an example to show you the difference between pages and templates and so on. So we're just going to call this global widget. And we'll just publish this page. We'll edit with Elementor. Once the Elementor editor's opened up, we're just going to do a little search for testimonials. So we're going to grab a testimonial widget, drop that into the page. And what we're going to do now is we're going to quickly make some changes to that. So we're just going to add in an image, for example. We'll adjust the font styling and so on, just so we've got something a little bit more unique than the default so we can see the changes we make. So we're just going to set that to be italic Times New Roman. So we'll say we're happy with that. So now what we need to do is save that as a global widget. Now, this is where you have to understand how global widgets work. This is
a widget, not a section or anything else. So for example, if we come into the section that contains the widget and we right click, we can say save as template. If we click save as template, we can save it as a template. We can't save it as a global widget. So how do we get around that? Well, you don't. You have to come to the widget that you want to save globally and then right click on that and choose save as global. So now we say save as global. We're going to call this global testimonial widget. Now, you'll see that my naming convention just makes my life easier. If I say global at the beginning, I know this is a global widget, and I know global testimonial widget. Well, I kind of know what it is. It says, it's on the tin. Hit save. Once we do that, you'll see now where we normally have just the element, we've got all our normal widgets inside there. If we come to the global section, we'll now have a list of all of the global widgets we have. And you'll see they've also got this little sort of yellowy orange folder in the top left hand corner. That just denotes that we've got a global widget. So now let's update this page so you can see everything is set up in there. Let's come out of this now, go back to our dashboard, and we're going to come into our template section, into our theme builder. We're going to go into our default single. We're going to edit that with Elementor, and we're going to put this at the bottom of every one of our single post templates. So we're going to come into this. We're going to just add that global widget in. So we're going to click to add a new section in. We can style this section any way we want. Like I say, it's independent of the actual global widget. So we'll click on that. We'll just put a bit of spacing above and below just so we can make a bit of room on there. So we'll do 50 at the top and 50 at the bottom. So we've got a bit of space. Now we come back into our widgets. Go to global. There's our global testimonial widget. We can drag and drop that onto our page, and you can see that drops it in there. But it also gives us some additional options. We can edit the global widget, or we can unlink it from global. If we edit the global widget, any changes we make to that will be reflected throughout the entire site that's linked to that global widget. If we want to unlink it and make a change to this one that doesn't reflect on all those other global widgets, we can do that. We basically unlink its global connection. Hope that makes sense. So we'll say update on there. So we've now got this global widget set up. Now then, let's just come back out of this. We can see we've got the lorem ipsum text from John Doe. So we say we're happy with that. Everything is all set up. We'll exit to our dashboard. We'll come back to our initial page that's got that in there. So we're going to come into our global widget. We'll edit that with Elementor. And what we're going to do is we're going to change the text a little bit. So we're going to click on this. We're going to click edit. And then what we're going to do is we're going to grab this and we're just going to duplicate it. So we'll put two lots of the same thing there. So we've now got more text in there. We'll hit update. That's now updated this instance of it. But also if we come back and take a look at one of our single pages, we'll just refresh that, scroll down, and you can see now that's also been reflected in this particular section as well. So that link means it's a two-way link. We can update it on one and then that'll reflect right the way throughout our site. So this is a great way of doing things like you may have a sign-up form for your mailing list. Then if you quickly wanted to change your provider from something like MailChimp to MailerLite, you can make one change and then that will be reflected upon the entire site everywhere that uses that global widget. Super simple and a real time saver.
So that's the theme builder in a nutshell, and hopefully what you've seen is it's not complicated. The new features have been introduced in the more recent updates of Elementor and Elementor Pro have opened up even more creative possibilities to make working with creating your own theme as part of Elementor a much simpler and more straightforward process. As always though, I'd love to get your feedback on what I've covered in this video. Drop your comments in the comments section below. If you've created your own themes, put some links in there so we can take a look and see the kind of things you've created with this combination. As always, all of the applicable links for everything I've covered in this video are in the description below, so you can check those out. My name's been Paul C. This has been WPTuts, and until next time, take care.